Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today, as promised, I said if you hit the like goal we would do this video. I'm finally getting round to making a video on the most underrated player at each club in the Scottish Premiership this season. Now, it's going to be interesting. I can already tell a lot of supporters in the comments below are going to disagree with what I'm going to say, but we're just going to go for it anyway. What have I got the right to decide? You know, it's only me. Just take it with a pinch of salt. Let's get right into it anyway. Very quickly before we do get into the video, I just want to say very briefly, no, this isn't a paid video, this isn't a paid sponsorship, this is my own company. Today, my wee company that I do with my friends have launched Mostro Clothing. Our shirt is now officially out. If you would like to buy one, please check out the link in the top line of the description. It would be a great help. We're trying to get ourselves launching as far as possible, you know, that would be nice. If you could do so, that would be nice, if you can afford it. Don't do it if you can't. But I'm going to roll a little trailer for you, if you've not already had enough ads, just to try and get you in the mood to buy one, because, you know, a lot of investments went into this, so yeah, it would be nice. In all seriousness, I mean, if you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. But it would be appreciated. Anyway, you're here for Scottish football content. We're going to talk about Scottish football. Who is the most underrated player at each club? Please keep in mind, I am an outsider looking in. I don't know much about many of the other clubs' players. I don't watch every team week in, week out. I watch Celtic week in, week out. I have much better idea of what's going on at Celtic than I do at the likes of Hamilton, Motherwell, Kilmarnock. I am going from what I have seen, what I believe. You, as a fan of your own club, might disagree. Let me know if you do disagree in the comments. It'll be interesting to see who you think are the most underrated players. But for me, this is a list. We're going to try and go through all 12 teams as quickly as possible, because I don't want to be here for 20 minutes. We're going to start in alphabetical order as usual and make our way to the very end. Here we go, starting at Aberdeen. Right, Aberdeen then, and I'm going to start off with a player who I believe for a long time has been an unbelievably good footballer for the club. Not so much in his second spell he was in his first, but Niall McGinn for me is the most underrated player at Aberdeen. At Aberdeen, of course, over the last year or so, the talk has been mainly on Sam Cosgrove. People have been focusing on him and his goal scoring ability, but a lot of people forgetting how good Niall McGinn actually is over on that right hand side of the park. Coming from Celtic years ago, made his way through there, now at Aberdeen, well, was at Aberdeen, left, I think he went, was it South Korea ended up going to or something, and now he's back. He's still a fantastic football player. I feel like he doesn't get much of the credit that he actually does deserve. Very quickly for Aberdeen, I'd like to point out, thank you to Don's Talk. Go and check him out on YouTube. He helped me out with picking Aberdeen's player. Very good suggestion in Niall McGinn. We always talk about the battle between Mo Elyounoussi and Ryan Kent of who's the best kind of, or James Forrest or blah blah blah, the best wingers in the league. A lot of people forgetting Niall McGinn actually outperformed the likes of Ryan Kent last season with 7 goals and 10 assists. Like, where is he in the conversation? Is it just because he plays for Aberdeen? Is it just because he's a bit older? Look, I'm not saying he's the most technically gifted footballer to ever see this league, but certainly doesn't get enough praise as he deserves. And, as I said, better than Ryan Kent statistically last season. I know Rangers fans are going to bite my head off trying to say that I'm claiming he's better than Ryan Kent. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying when you think about it, he could be. Right then, my own team, Celtic. Who do I think is the most underrated player at Celtic? I've actually gone with Ryan Christie. Now, I know a lot of people might go, whoa, Ryan Christie's not underrated. Look, there's been a big conversation since Hadji's signed for Rangers as to who's better, Ryan Christie or Yanis Hadji, who would get whoever's team. But Ryan Christie is unbelievable. Last year, for a very big portion of the season, he was actually our top goal scorer, and he has came on strides. Like, he is miles better than what he once was. He had that loan out to Aberdeen, gave him a kick up the backside, came back to Celtic, struggled for a little bit, then grabbed his place in the team, and I still don't feel like, including myself, enough people give him the respect that he actually deserves for the way he's been playing over the past year and a bit. He's been unbelievable. I feel like a lot of people have, and I think it is probably a bit far to say he's underrated. I feel like he is getting the rating he deserves, but we're lucky enough at Celtic not to have too many really underrated players. I was stuck between him and Neil Beaton, I was going to say, but I don't feel like he's played enough football to be truly underrated. He's been out for a long time and he's only played a handful of games over the past however many we've played. And then Abdel Ahmed, I was thinking him as well because I think he's solid, but he's once again been out with injury for a long time, so I don't feel like we've got enough football to judge those guys, and that's why I went for Christie. Mostly because a lot of people on the other side of Glasgow are saying that Hagi's a better player. Hagi's been here a few months, Christie has been doing this for the last year and a half or whatever, and he's been unbelievable at doing so. So I think he deserves more respect. I'm not saying Hagi's not a good player, once again, don't put words in my mouth, but Christie definitely is one of the top players in this country. I feel like he deserves more respect from probably the wider fan base, not Celtic, just out with. Dundee United, I've gone for Nicky Clark. Why have I gone for Nicky Clark? Everybody likes to talk about Lawrence Shankland. That is the man that Dundee United have been like, you know, everybody's saying, oh, they're going to stay up because of Shankland. He's going to score the most goals for Dundee United. He might end up top scorer in this league. But a lot of people are forgetting about how good a player Nicky Clark can actually be. He's scored already upon the return to the top flight, and he's just coming back from a big injury as well. So I think he'll be dying to prove himself in that Dundee United team and show that they don't just need to rely on Lawrence Shankland. A point that my good friend David always likes to bring up about Lawrence Shankland is the Premiership might not actually be as good for him as people think, due to the fact that Dundee United might be a bit more under the cosh than obviously what they were in the Championship. Nicky Clark could be a more complete footballer than Lawrence Shankland for this league. Only time will tell, but I think he's a cracking player. I think a lot of people are forgetting how many goals he might chip in with this season, and for me, he's easily the most underrated player because of who's probably lined up against. Hamilton, I'm going to be very quick and concise about. How hard was it to pick an underrated player from Hamilton? Yes, incredibly hard. At Hamilton, they're not exactly gifted with brilliant footballers. They have a really strong team though that know how to work well together. They stayed up last season and they could stay up this season as well with the quality they've got in and around the park. For me, I've gone for Jamie Hamilton. I think he's a solid defender. I think he does well. And, you know, he's not exceptional. But I feel like a lot more of the praise comes moving forward the park for Hamilton players. Thinking at the back how much they are under the cosh, they do rely on these defenders to have good performances week in, week out. And he's young, he's upcoming, he's definitely shown promise, and he will move on from Hamilton to a bigger team. For me, underrated might be a stretch, but he is one of the best players of that team. And you know what, he probably deserves a bit more credit than he gets. Hibs, I've gone with Darryl Hogg, and statistically last season he might have not jumped off the page as someone who was, you know, prolific or as important as what I may make out here, but a lot of people look at Hibs and think, you know, straight away Martin Boyle. He is fantastic at the moment, unbelievable. He's probably top of the list for the best player at the club at the minute. And they've now got Nisbet, who's came in, scored a hat-trick at the weekend, fantastic player. And they've also got Doidge, who was scoring goals in the second half of last season everywhere. But Darryl Hogg, for me, is a very good playmaker on that left-hand side, and I feel like a lot of the stuff that he does goes unnoticed. He might not have goals and assists there to show for it, but I certainly think he does have an aspect to the game that kind of opens it up for Hibs. Good player, good speed, and you know what, overall, he might not be incredible, probably a bit of a bang average footballer. That sounds pretty harsh to say, but you know what I mean. I feel like he just deserves a little bit more. He's certainly underrated. When I watch him, I always feel like he does a good job. I feel like Hibs fans might have other suggestions. I was thinking maybe Paul Hanlon. I even like Paul McGinn. I think he's quite underrated. But Darryl Hogg, for me, you know, he's in the shadow of Martin Boyle, it would seem. Kilmarnock, Chris Buck. Now, last time I done this video, well, last week when I done the video best players at every club, I used the Plastic Park as Kilmarnock's answer. I didn't think there was a standout player at the club. Certainly for me, their best player has got to be Chris Buck. Him or probably Dicker in the midfield. But Chris Buck, unbelievable player for his age. What is he, 36, 37 now? And he's still going for it. He's still going for it as if he's never aged a day. I mean, certainly he looks as though he's aged. Let's get that perfectly clear. But in terms of him playing on the park, fantastic for his age. He's looked after himself well, he's kept fit. And he still knows how to score a belter of a goal. We've seen that with a free kick against Hibs at the first game of the season. So Chris Buck, for me, is certainly the most underrated player at Kelly. I feel like the first couple of weeks of the season he's had a lot of credit, a lot of praise. He's been on the back pages of the papers and everything. But over the past, you know, kind of 12 to 18 months, he doesn't get as much as there. 6 assists he got in one game in January. That is madness. Good player, certainly underrated for me. I feel like Kilmarnock fans might disagree. They'll probably have other players that feel are more underrated. But from an outsider looking in, remember that That's the key part here. That's what makes it work. Motherwell, and shout out to Gogs who helped me out with this one. He decided pretty much who I would pick here, and he certainly went with a good player, there's no denying that. Alan Campbell, 22 years of age, centre defensive midfielder. You probably know about him because he is a kind of standout player at Motherwell. I think he is certainly very talented, and I agree with Gogs, doesn't get the recognition he deserves. I feel, you've got your Turnbulls moving back, you've got Gallagher, he's kind of sandwiched in the middle of those as a defensive midfielder, isn't he? He's kind of got Turnbull ahead of him, Gallagher behind him, he's kind of unknown there, but he chipped in 5 goals last season from the defensive midfielder position, which, is really good. It's not easy for a defensive midfielder to go forward and get goals. He's young as well, he's only going to keep improving. He's a real asset to that Motherwell side, and I feel like he's one of those players, if you took him out the middle, if you just took him out for a day, just one game, gone on the bench, you would certainly notice a difference. That area of the field is so important, and people forget that sometimes. We often talk about clean sheets and goals, but we forget about how important these anchor men in the middle of the park can be. Very good player, I rate him highly. Thank you, Gogs. Livingston, very similar story to what I said about Alan Campbell. I'm going for Marvin Bartley. Why? He is solid. A great player. I'm still surprised Hibs kind of let him go a couple of years back, and a fantastic pickup for Livingston. He showed that last season. He was really important to their season when they were doing so well, that period kind of before Christmas and such, when they racked up the points to get up there in the upper half of the table. He was so important to that because of how solid he was at keeping it together in the midfield. He can pick a pass, he's good, he's just solid. He's a solid guy, and a lot of what I said about Alan Campbell is the same for him. Very important. You took him out there, I think they'd be lost in that middle area of the park. So Marvin Bartley was the answer for me. There is other players, I think Holt's good. Moving back, they've got some good players as well. But I had to go for Big Bartley. Rangers, Who am I going to say? Who do you think, Rangers fans? I'll give you a guess. I'm going Glenn Kamara. I think he was shocked by it. I'm going Glenn Kamara. I feel like for £50,000, first of all, what a signing that is. He's not exactly going to set the world alight. He's not going to sell for £5, £6, £7 million anytime soon. He's not by any means near the best centre midfielders in the league, but he is a solid footballer and he does a lot of the basics right. I think he does lose out the ball a bit in the middle of the park and such, but talk about a player who was at Dundee and he's got for 50 grand. He came in, I remember Steven Gerrard, I think it was his first appearance for Rangers, was saying he was like a Rolls Royce in the middle of the park. Probably more like a early 2000s Rover than a Rolls Royce, but he does a job when he's asked. And I think he's one of those players you get at Celtic all the time. He can be really good, makes a couple of mistakes, and fans will get right on his back. I feel like that's the impression I get as a Celtic fan. I could be wrong, but for me he's just an incredibly underrated player, a decent player, and when he plays, I've never really seen too much of an issue with him. Ross County, I've gone for Ross Draper. They've got some good players at Ross County, and a team who I tipped for bottom of the table have started the season incredibly well. 2 wins, a draw. They are, proving me a dafty, and they're proving many other people a dafty, because a lot of people said they would go down, and one of the best players I think since the season has restarted has been Ross Draper for them, but he doesn't quite get the praise and the credit that the likes of Ross Stewart does, the likes of Billy Mackay does, and I don't quite know why, because I think he's equally as good a footballer. Now, saying that, Ross Stewart probably is by far their best player at the club, but he's no far off them, and I never hear him get mentioned as much as the other two, and maybe I'm guilty of that as well. When I do my season predictions, I always come back to talk about Stewart and Mackay, and when I'm doing podcasts with Big Dave, we talk about those two when Ross County players to pop up, but we always forget Draper, and I think he's a solid footballer. I like him. He's most underrated at County for me. St Johnstone, Xander Clark. Yes, I've gone for the goalkeeper at St Johnstone. They're obviously in a big moment now of their existence where they've lost the manager who was he was just a figurehead there for years. He's 8-9 years of the job. Crazy that he's gone, but Xander Clark for me is incredibly underrated. I think this is a goalkeeper who's very guilty of making the odd blunder, but who isn't? I've seen a few howlers by Xander Clark, but on the whole, in general, he makes some unbelievable saves, and I feel like he has been mad. It's been mad how much he has helped St Johnstone save points over the past few years. I think his performances between the sticks have been important at points to be probably stop them from getting dragged into relegation battles. I've heard him get some amount of dogs abuse as well, because he can have howlers, he can have performances you're like, why is he still in goals for them? But you watch a save compilation of Xander Clark, the save he pulls off are mental. Half the time it's the howlers that go in, you're like, how's he not saving them? But for me, I think he gets too much stick. I think he's a good keeper. Underrated, I would say. Finally, the last player we're going to talk about, the most underrated player at St Mirren, Richard Tait. A very good signing for me, I thought, from Motherwell. I was surprised when Motherwell let him go, to be quite honest, and now he finds himself at St Mirren. got a goal on the opening day of the season. I think he's solid, and he's fitting into a system there which looks very promising for St Mirren, and I think he can be a key part of taking that forward with Jim Goodwin's side. I think he brings a lot of experience in, he knows the game up here in Scotland. Very solid player. I don't see many issues with his game. Of course, never going to be a top of the table type player, you know, he's never going to be Celtic, Rangers or whatever, but for a team like St Mirren, it's a marvellous signing. I think he'll do the world of good for them. That does it then. That's my opinions for the most underrated players around the Scottish Premiership at each club. Yes, I waffle nonsense. I wanted to get it done in a row. I wanted to set a minute max on every player, so I'm just chatting absolute nonsense. Hope you appreciate that. Like and subscribe. I'll see y'all next time.